Chosen one, you didn't stumble onto this message. You were drawn here, not by luck, not by chance, but by divine orchestration. There's a reason your spirit feels stirred right now, because something sacred is unfolding over your life, and heaven wanted to make sure you didn't miss it. You've been holding on when it would have been easier to let go. Showing up, even when no one noticed. Fighting through heaviness with a kind of quiet strength no one really understood, but God did. And now, the atmosphere is shifting. The resistance is breaking. You're not just entering a new chapter. You're entering a whole new dimension of peace, power, and purpose. This isn't just another word to scroll past. This is your confirmation. This is your moment. The season of endless survival is coming to a close, and what's rising now is rest that renews, favor that flows, and clarity that can't be shaken. If you're reading this, you're not just curious, you're called. And not everyone is built to carry what you're carrying, but you are. You've been marked. You've been prepared. And now, you're being positioned. Before we dive into the revelation, take a second to ground yourself. Breathe deep. Let your spirit settle. Because what you're about to receive isn't information, it's impartation. If this is resonating in your chest, type 55 in the comments right now. That's not just a number. It's a signal, a declaration that says, I'm in alignment. I'm ready. I receive. The next few moments could shift everything. So lean in. Stay present. Because the peace you've been praying for is already reaching for you. Let's walk into it together. Are you ready? Let's go. Looking for purpose and peace? Hit subscribe and start the journey. There are those whose resilience was forged in quiet storms, not by choice but by necessity. This isn't just another reflection or a gentle reminder. It is a sacred unveiling, a signal that your unseen endurance did not go unnoticed. While the world remained preoccupied with its noise, there was one who observed every silent quake within you. When the weight of unfinished questions made the air feel too thick to breathe, there was a presence surrounding you. When your smile became a mask, and you became fluent in hiding sorrow behind small talk, that same presence stood beside you. Not once were your sacrifices dismissed in the unseen realms. When you traded your comfort to be someone else's stability, when your compassion overflowed even while your own well ran dry, it was all recorded in silence. There were no missed details. The silent departures, the ones who withdrew without a trace, witnessed. The unearned blame, the whispered distortions of your truth, acknowledged. When your loyalty was a river and there's a drought, the imbalance wasn't overlooked. Still, you moved with grace, refusing to let bitterness take root. You kept breathing into broken days. You held hope for others, even when you were unsure of your own tomorrows. That mattered. Your battle wasn't a signal of abandonment, but evidence that you were being refined, not erased. The voids weren't empty. They were classrooms. Where you expected absence, there was formation. Where you expected rejection, there was preparation. The collapse you feared was actually an unveiling. Layer by layer, what couldn't follow you into your next chapter was peeled away. Not to harm, but to free. What felt like delay was discipline. What felt like loneliness was the making of unshakable strength. The shell cracked not to destroy, but to release something greater. Feel God's love stirring within you? Don't let it stop there. Hit the super thank you button and sow a seed of $20 or more. That simple act can ignite hope, heal hearts, and carry His love further than you imagine. You were made to shine His light. This is your moment. Be the miracle someone's been praying for. Let heaven move through you. Now the atmosphere shifts. The terrain beneath you softens. The long strain of holding everything together fades. What once felt unreachable becomes your resting place. Breath returns without burden. Joy doesn't knock anymore. It enters freely. Peace, once a stranger, pulls up a chair. The unseen witness now speaks. You endured. You overcame. Now receive what has long been prepared for you. Not as a reward for surviving, but as a recognition that you were never truly alone in the first place. There are lives built with quiet power, shaped not by coincidence, but by intent. When certain souls pass through the fire, it isn't misfortune. It's because their presence threatens shadows long before they even learn to walk in light. If you look back only through the surface of what happened, you'll misread the architecture of your story. This wasn't a streak of hardship. It was a targeted resistance to purpose. From the earliest moments, before understanding took form, there was something sacred stitched into your path. That signature was recognized long before you recognized it yourself. A silent storm tried to erase you before you could speak your name into destiny. Not because you were weak, but because what you carried was disruptive. Before your first choice, your life was already echoing through unseen dimensions. The roadblocks weren't accidental. They were planted like weeds to choke your patience. The sorrow wasn't random. It was woven to confuse your compass, to whisper that dreams were dangerous. Repeating patterns, familiar wounds. They weren't proof of failure, but attempts to rewrite your beliefs about your worth and identity. Make your impact eternal. Join now and be a light in someone's darkness. But the damage didn't do what it was meant to. What was meant to drown you became the very place you learned how to breathe in storms. Every loss didn't strip you. It revealed what couldn't be taken. What was sent to silence, you only deepened your sound. The fear that camped in your thoughts underestimated what had already been placed in your spirit. You weren't just protected. You were pre-equipped. While opposition was crafting obstacles, heaven was reinforcing your structure. Even when you were convinced you were alone, divine help was present, not in flashes of glory, but in quiet reroutes, timely delays, invisible guards, and inner strength you couldn't trace back to logic. Every unseen rescue, every moment your mind held on by a thread, it was evidence of something fighting for you beyond what you could see. The resistance was loud, but the covering was louder. Your arrival here isn't random. The fact that you're still standing isn't luck. It's proof that what was set against you has already failed. The plan you didn't see unfolding was moving in your favor the entire time. And now, what was hidden is preparing to become visible. What tried to bury you is breaking open. And the very places that hurt the most are the ones that will shine the brightest. That shift you sense, it's real. The air is different, not because the world changed, but because you did. The pressure has thinned. The opposition has lost its grip. This is not a return to who you were, but an emergence of who you were always becoming. The invisible war was never the end. It was the unlocking. And now comes the part where what was always true becomes undeniable in form. You've pressed beyond exhaustion. You've endured storms within storms. The conflict was never physical. It was ancient, and it has already turned in your favor. Now comes the evidence, substantial, unshakable, and unmistakably real. Some lives are carved in the quiet between exhaustion and persistence, molded by the constant pressure to keep going even when everything resists. There comes a point, not marked by clocks or calendars, where something unseen calls time on the struggle. A line gets drawn, not by human will but by divine authority, and everything that once drained begins to dissolve. The stretch you endured wasn't for nothing. You've walked through a stretch of time where progress demanded more than effort. It demanded soul. Where every small gain cost you more than it seemed to return. You kept showing up, not because it was easy, but because something inside wouldn't let you quit. But now the terrain is changing. The push that once felt endless is quieting, not because the work is gone, but because a new force is carrying it differently. Feel God's love stirring within you? Don't let it stop there. Hit the super thank you button and sow a seed of $20 or more. That simple act can ignite hope, heal hearts, and carry His love further than you imagine. You were made to shine His light. This is your moment. Be the miracle someone's been praying for. Let heaven move through you. No longer will you need to chase validation through output. No longer will your worth be tested by how much strain you can withstand. This isn't a slow recovery. This is a shift in the fabric of how things move around you. What felt like swimming upstream now feels like stepping into a current that knows exactly where you're going. The heaviness that clung to each effort is lifting. Where before you had to climb through resistance, now paths will open with presence alone. The proving season is closing. You're not being rescued from work. You're being aligned with its rhythm. The kind of movement that doesn't consume you, but fulfills you. Support is being sent, not in response to your pleas, but in response to what's already been determined. You won't have to explain why you matter. The right ones will see it before you speak. They won't weigh your value. They'll reflect it. And they won't arrive to take credit, but to carry weight you were never meant to bear solo. Tasks won't disappear, but the torment behind them will. What used to drain your joy will now generate it. The hurried, anxious pace will give way to stillness that creates more than force ever could. The internal friction is being replaced by a clarity that sharpens instead of confuses. This new cadence won't ask you to keep up. It will carry you in stride. Where once you pulled with calloused hands, now momentum meets you with open doors. Results that once took every ounce of grit will now unfold with graceful timing. What overwhelmed you will now yield to your authority. Not because chaos left, but because your footing changed. You're no longer reacting from the bottom. You're initiating from above. This is the end of the internal war you thought would never pause. This is the beginning of movement born from flow, not strain. What's coming is not compensation. It's the natural outcome of being where you were always meant to be. No longer by survival, but by design. The ones built for deeper work are often misunderstood. They carry purpose in stillness, yet they're misjudged in silence. There comes a season where a new kind of movement is required. Not louder, not faster, but rooted. This is the moment where rest is redefined, not as a retreat from action, but as the recalibration of intention. Rest isn't stepping away from responsibility. It's stepping into alignment with something greater than your own hands. It isn't the absence of effort, but the absence of internal chaos. Rest is not a race motion, it refines it. When striving falls away, clarity begins to rise. You begin to understand that motion without direction is depletion disguised as progress. Rest is not retreat, it is recalibration. It is operating from centeredness rather than scattered urgency. In this season, you're not being asked to abandon what you've been building. You're being invited to rebuild how you build. No longer reacting, but responding. No longer rushing, but discerning. The pressure to prove something falls away when you realize your position isn't earned through exhaustion. You don't have to sprint to be effective. You don't have to grind yourself into depletion to be considered devoted. You're being trained to walk through doors with quiet assurance instead of needing to pound them open. The shift will not require abandonment of responsibility, but the removal of fear's fingerprints from your motivation. Your decisions will no longer be shaped by panic. Your momentum will no longer come from desperation. You will create, lead, and pursue from a place where your core remains untouched by the noise outside of you. What once required convincing will now come through alignment. The right relationships won't demand endless explanation. The right paths won't need to be forced open. The atmosphere will recognize you because you're walking with precision, not pressure. The clutter of false urgency is clearing, and in its place comes a rhythm that feels like it was tailor-made for your soul. The outcome will look like less effort but greater impact. Not because you've stopped trying, but because you've stopped forcing. The blueprint was never meant to be carried in your strength alone. Now the weight lifts, not because it vanished, but because you're no longer lifting it without help. Invisible resources begin to move. Timings line up. What felt stalled begins to breathe. Rest becomes your guide, not your guilt. And rest protects what anxiety once polluted. The clarity you now walk in guards you from paths that drain and people that distract. The noise no longer gets a vote. Discernment, not impulse, leads the way now. You'll begin to notice your strength returning, not in the form of hustle, but in the form of wisdom. You'll pause without fear. You'll say no without shame. And you'll recognize that quiet progress is often louder in the spirit than public striving. This isn't stillness born from fatigue. It's strategy born from trust. Even when your hands aren't building, something greater is. Even when you do less, things move more. Not because of your pressure, but because of your positioning. This is the shift. Not less responsibility, but more authority with less burden. And as you flow from this new current, you'll see. True rest doesn't stop the mission. It accelerates it. There are turning points where what once pressed you to the ground now becomes the very ground you stand taller upon. Not because life suddenly corrected itself, but because something wholly decided the cost had been counted, and the recompense recalculated. This isn't the erasure of struggle. It's the transformation of it. Every weight lifted is being replaced with something more radiant, more substantial, more eternal. This isn't the universe evening the score. This is a higher power rewriting the balance altogether. What's being handed to you now doesn't resemble what was lost. It exceeds it. Emptiness isn't the end of the equation. It's the beginning of restoration. What left your hands is nothing compared to what's arriving in them. The struggle didn't end in silence. It ended in exchange. Don't think this is about subtraction. This is an upgrade. What once drained you will be replaced with what fills you. What once echoed with sorrow now resounds with clarity. Where confusion once lingered, peace has taken root. The remnants of former pain are being replaced by purpose you didn't see coming. But this is not just emotional healing. It is strategic rebuilding. Not scraps for silver. It's something sacred for something surrendered. You gave up fragments, and now you're receiving foundations. You endured loss, but what's forming now isn't compensation, it's construction. You are being rebuilt from the inside out, layer by layer, into someone who carries more capacity than before. The shift is not just in your surroundings, it's in your stature. Where once you crouched beneath the weight of disappointment, you now rise with quiet authority. What once silenced your voice will soon amplify your influence. The places that once reminded you of failure now become evidence of favor. The people who once doubted you will witness what faith built behind closed doors. You will no longer enter spaces feeling less than. You'll feel the shift in how you speak, how you move, how you breathe. Confidence that once felt out of reach will now feel like your default. Wounds have become wells. Emptiness has become overflow. You won't recognize the version of yourself who had to beg to be seen, because that version no longer fits the future being shaped around you. And the most extraordinary part is this. The transformation isn't only for you. What rises in your life will spark belief in others. They'll see what was impossible become visible in your journey. Your very presence will become a story, a mirror to remind others that redemption is real and nothing surrendered is wasted. This is no longer a survival season. This is your expansion. The rebuilding has begun. Let go of the last fragments of despair. Drop the echoes of what didn't work. You are not being emptied. You are being redefined. Something far greater is being poured into the places that once felt hollow. And when the fullness comes, you'll understand. You were never just being preserved. You were being positioned. Some people are trained to believe that help only comes when they're at their last breath. That provision must be wrestled for, clawed into existence, or painfully earned. But in this moment, something sacred is unfolding. The unseen has already been arranged. The pieces are not moving into place. They are already there, waiting to be revealed, not constructed. Before the turbulence reached you, resolution had already been scheduled. The release didn't start when the pressure mounted. It was written long before you were aware you'd need it. Every twist that caught you off guard had already been anticipated. What feels like a current crisis is simply the final step before alignment. The path has not been improvised. It was charted in advance, and now your steps are tracing what has already been cleared. You're not being forced to build from scraps. What's ahead wasn't sourced from panic. It was crafted from intention. You aren't being summoned to fight your way in, but to show up to a space designed with you in mind. What surrounds you may not reflect the shift yet, but don't confuse invisibility with absence. It's not being created now. It's already present. The timing isn't late. It's precise. Just because your hands don't feel it yet doesn't mean your name isn't already on it. This isn't about luck, labor, or leverage. It's about walking into a reality that has been waiting for your agreement. Not a transaction, but a meeting point between preparation and presence. The tension you've carried about outcomes is being replaced with certainty. Not because everything is in your control, but because nothing was ever out of divine reach. There are no hoops to jump through, no masks to wear, no doors to hammer on. What's meant for you will not require you to twist your voice or compromise your identity. Entry has already been granted where alignment exists. The atmosphere will open, not because of your noise, but because of your name. And when it happens, when provision finds you instead of you chasing it, those who questioned your pace will witness your overflow. Not one drop will be the result of performance. Every bit of it will be proof of quiet trust rewarded. Now is the intersection. The prepared heart meets the prepared harvest. The table is not being set, it is ready. You are not arriving late. You are arriving when you're strongest enough to carry it. And once you do, you will realize it was never the effort that built it. It was always the promise that kept it. Some individuals carry entire seasons on their shoulders, always reaching, always managing, always holding it all together. But there comes a moment, not of collapse, but of clarity, when you realize rest isn't something earned, it's something allowed. And not just allowed by heaven, but by you. Rest doesn't sneak in with time. It must be opened like a door. You can speak of rest, wish for it, even preach it to others, yet still live tense, guarded, and wired for survival. Rest is not a stop, it's a shift. It's not silence from activity. It's the soft rewiring of your interior world.